You must not question the narcissist. You are not allowed to question us. To do so is an affront to our notion of superiority and lack of accountability. Your questioning of us may be deliberate, in that you want to know why we have rolled up half drunk at 3 a.m, or it may be perceived by us as you questioning us in a critical fashion, even though you have not intended this. For example, you politely ask us where we have been. We regard this, either consciously or unconsciously, as those you are suggesting to us that we are not allowed to do as we want, and that we are somehow to be accountable to you. If you engage in deliberate questioning, it is usually the case, until such time as you become fully acquainted with what we are and know how to approach dealing with us, that your methodology be one that provides us with fuel, even though you are challenging us. You will ask in an annoyed fashion where we have been, or express irritation when you ask why we have not moved the rubbish outside. When there is deliberate questioning, we do not like you challenging us, but because you do so at the same time as providing us with fuel, then the fury isn't ignited. Instead, we recognize your challenging behavior and identify that this must be addressed. We address this either knowingly, where an aware narcissist, or instinctively, where an unaware narcissist. The threat to control manifests through your questioning and has to be identified. Our superiority has to be exerted, but at the same time, we also identify, either consciously or unconsciously, that there is an opportunity for us to gain yet more fuel from you. You might think that since our fury has not been ignited, that we could just accept the fuel provided and admit that we are in the wrong, explain what has happened, and allow the matter to be resolved. A normal person may do this, and you, as an empathic individual, would say your piece, and with agreement and resolution being reached, you draw a line under it and move on. Such a scenario is no good to us. You have challenged us, and therefore we must maintain our superiority. We must have control, and therefore we must reject your challenge. The opportunity to reject also prevents us with a chance to draw fuel from you, by denying your assertion and so forth. Thus we assert control and draw fuel from you, two of the prime aims. If you engage in perceived questioning, this invariably ignites our fury, because you are more likely to do it in a fuel-free manner, so that the perceived criticism arising from your questioning wounds us. Our fury then ignites and we lash out in order to demand fuel to heal the wound caused by your criticism. You may have asked us a question, but you did so in a fuel-free manner without any agenda attached to it. It's not common, but it can happen. However, we do not see it, either consciously or unconsciously, as you doing so without an agenda. Your simple query of, "Where have you been?" is interpreted through our distortion field as suggesting that we are not entitled to do what we want without your approval first. It is delivered without fuel, and thus, being critical, wounding occurs, and the ignition of fury follows. Again, because it's a threat to our control, we must strike back and assert our superiority, and we will also look where we assert control through the direct assertion of control to draw fuel from you. Accordingly, whether you raise questions of us in an emotional manner, whether you do so without the provision of fuel, whether you are demanding that we explain ourselves, or that your question is innocuous, you are going to find that you will threaten our sense of control, and therefore you're likely to provoke a response and often an argument. We, consciously or unconsciously, do not want you questioning us, whether it is deliberate or perceived. You are not permitted by the rules of our narcissism to do so. Once you do so, we must reject that challenge, that threat to our control, and assert our control over you and draw fuel from you, either because we see there is a further opportunity to do so, or because we have to heal the wound that you've caused. What then is the result of this? The deployment of evasion tactics. This is why you are never able to have a reasonable discussion about something that is concerning you, or why the narcissist flies off the handle after a seemingly innocent question that you've asked us, and you find it both alarming and bewildering. This is why you find your concerns are not resolved, that you are pushed to a state of heightened emotion, confused, annoyed, and frustrated as we point-blank refuse to answer what you have asked of us. These responses, of course, are largely instinctive, a reaction to your challenging behaviour and the prospect or necessity of the drawing of fuel. The greater or the ultra, of course, will delight in adding these, by layering them with further manipulation and conscious game playing. So what are these evasion tactics? There are many, but below are 8, which you will no doubt be familiar with. Now you know that these responses, hitherto unexplained and perplexing, are instinctive responses designed to counter your challenge to our control and to cater to our need for fuel. No longer will you scratch your head at why we do these things when you question us. And instead, you ought now to realize how you are only falling into a trap every time you try to engage us. And this once again underlines the principle of go so, to get out and stay out. Why do you fall into this trap? Well, it is because of your innate empathic traits a lot of the time, capitalized on by your emotional thinking to cause you to be drawn into our machinations through the evasion tactics. You fall for this because you continue to engage with us, for example, some of the following reasons. Number 1, you need to secure the truth of what has happened, your truth seeker trait. 2, you want us to see your point of view, the need to heal and to fix. 3, you want to be heard, the need to be honest to yourself. 4, you want resolution, the need to be decent or to heal and to fix. These traits of yours cause you to become entangled every time we deploy the evasion tactics, of which I will now detail 8 for you. Number 1, drown you out. This direct assertion of control, we will talk over you, we will shout over you, we will hurl insults at you in a blitzkrieg response which is designed to result in the fact that since you can no longer be heard, then you can no longer challenge us. Hearing is challenging. We do not want to hear you any longer, and instead we draw fuel from your gestures and expressions as your blanketing response draws your frustration and anger. Number 2, other people. This is a direct assertion of control, but is triangulation. We shift the topic of conversation onto other people in order to deflect from your attack against us. We will explain how a colleague works similarly late and never receives any flack from his spouse in order to make you appear unreasonable. We will triangulate you by explaining how a previous partner never made such a fuss about our spending habits. By comparing you unfavourably to other people, we engage in that classic act of triangulation, aiming to belittle you and invalidate you, and cause you to talk about those other people rather than continue your attack against us. Number 3, delivery but not content. We will repeatedly interrupt you as we demand to be allowed to finish. We accuse you of not allowing us to speak our mind. We tell you that you are judging us before we have been able to state our case. We remind you not to interrupt us, not to raise your voice at us, demand you lower your voice or change your tone. None of this, of course, actually addresses the content of what you are wanting to discuss with us, but instead, through a direct assertion of control, we deflect by getting you to defend yourself by saying that you're not interrupting, that you're not raising your voice, and so forth. Your challenge then becomes lost as you are caught up in these sideshows, and all the while the fuel pours from you. Number 4, early resolution. This is a classic tactic of both the lesser and the mid-range narcissist. The lesser, lacking the articulate nature to continue the verbal sparring, decides to call time on the discussion and thus end the attack. He will announce that the discussion is at an end and will sign off with one last act where he will draw a certain surge of fuel from you. He may push you and bellow that the matter is now over, or even lash out with fists and spit in your face, that he has had enough of talking and your shocked and hurt response providing that jet of fuel that he requires, and he then asserts control further, having done so directly and then through withdrawal. Inherently satisfied that assertion has been achieved, and therefore this has instinctively avoided any further challenge. The mid-range narcissist will declare, "There's nothing more to discuss. I've made my point, and that is the end of it. This ends now." Control is further asserted by withdrawal and presentation of cold fury through a silent treatment. Gaining fuel after the event and having protected him or herself, perhaps when he felt the situation was slipping away from him, by withdrawing from the continuing challenge that you present. Number 5, the shift. We will turn the discussion onto something else completely. We may talk about some issue arising at work, point out that the exterior of the house needs a lick of paint, or that we are thinking about buying a new car. You will try and shift the topic back to what you want to discuss, but we will keep tugging it off topic again as we demonstrate our control over you, directly, and your emotional response to it continues to provide us with fuel. Number 6, the outgunning. You think we have done something wrong. Luckily for us, we know of plenty of other things which you have done, either through the application of the truth, or more usually the half-truth or nowhere near the truth, that are far, far worse. And therefore, we will commence our own inquisition of you about your behaviour in order to demonstrate that you are the one who is in the wrong, and therefore you should be subjected to the questioning, and not us. You feel the need to get to the truth of the matter, that truth-seeker trait again, and therefore you are derailed from advancing your questioning of us as you are forced into defending yourself. Number 7. How could you? How could you treat us in this manner after all that we have done for you, after the week we've had at work, knowing that our dog has just died, our football team has lost the final? The mid-range narcissist in particular will roll out one of the typical pity plays by pointing out that we have either done so much for you, and this is the thanks that we get, and or you're a heartless cow who's kicking us when we are down. Either way, it prompts you to justify your approach, and thus deflects from your threat to control, and a direct assertion of control has been utilised against you. Number 8. Pest. Why won't you leave us alone? We, of course, just want a simple and quiet life. Oh, the hypocrisy. But you just won't let us, will you? You have to keep pestering us with questions all of the bloody time. Just shut up and leave us be. This is often used when you engage in perceived questioning, as our abrupt response to you just asking, "How are you?" then leaves you upset and bewildered. These are 8 ways of many others that the narcissist will use in terms of a direct assertion of control to nullify the threat posed by your deliberate or perceived questioning. And it is important that you recognise this and understand that by trying to ask questions of us, even though you believe that they are legitimate, you are threatening our sense of control, and this is the response that you will receive. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.